Hi, everybody. This is Kris Swiatocho, and we are live Facebook. We're going to give everybody a chance to get on. I see it's still making a connection. Again, hi, everybody. If anybody is watching this, of course, we're coming at a different time and actually a different day as well. And so I'm doing live Facebook. I had a little bit of technical errors yesterday. A big error was my computer had no juice and didn't realize that, and so, but it's okay. So I don't know if you're at work right now or you're at home right now, but maybe you can to log on and check it out, and love to know if you can hear us speak. Again, my name is Kris Swiatocho, and I have a few different ministries. One is the big Labor Day retreat, and Pastor Obie, he's going to talk a little bit in a minute, has attended our big Labor Day retreat.
Couple times.
Yes, and so he could definitely speak firsthand his information about it, what he liked about it, and then second, I lead a ministry called the SinglesNetwork.org, which is the largest website for singles ministry resources, as well as my own personal ministry. I've put how to contact me in I posted it on this page, as well as Pastor Obie's information, but we're going to be talking about some things I think all of us are dealing with today, which is surviving the holidays. And so, again, I'm going to just, let us know if you can hear us. Give us a little shout out that you like, yeah, I can hear you. And we'll keep going. And please be sure to share this video, because this is how we really help people when we share it on our pages and encourage our friends. So with that, I want to introduce Pastor Obie. And Obie has never learned how to say my last name.
That is incorrect.
That's not correct. And I thought his last name was Dalrymple, and I found that was not how to say it. So then it's
How do you say it?
Dalrymple.
That is not correct.
Dalrymple.
Dalrymple.
Oh my gosh.
Super common name. I don't know why you struggle with it.
Like your whole name is Obadiah
Obadiah
Dalrymple. What a name to grow up with. How was that challenging growing up?
Really, since I go by Obie, it wasn't bad. And most people will happily just call me Obie, so that they don't have to try the rest, including you. I've known you over 3 years, and you're just like, I think just yesterday you learned how to say my name. So, and actually, let's be honest, you still haven't fully learned how to say it. So
even his kids are trying to help me remember it. I'm like, but you don't have to do that with my name too.
Yours is Swiss Taco, right?
No, there's no but one S in my name, Swiatocho. But my name doesn't
I knew
look.
that, by the way.
I know you did, but there's nothing about my name that shows you how to say it. So that's the challenge. If people are not around me and they hear me say it, then they look at it and they can't figure it out. And so but with my name, I don't know about your name, Obie, but I use my name as an opportunity to witness to people, an opportunity to start a conversation, because people always want to know what kind of name is that. And they ask me if it's Indian, and they ask me if it's Japanese. That's my mama's side, and of course it isn't. I bet you they say the same as you.
Well, especially with Obadiah, I can very easily go into a Bible conversation with someone and just say, yeah, it's a book of the Bible. And it's not necessarily a happy book of the Bible, but it is one nonetheless, and so we can have that conversation.
Yes. So now Obie is on staff at First Baptist in O'Fallon, Illinois. And I wanted to just, some of you guys might not know him. He does lead singles, but I'm going to give him a chance to share a little bit about what he does here and in the areas of singles ministry that he leads.
All right, so we have two groups. We have our single young adults and our single adults, and so have a lot to do in both of those groups. And our single adults, we have our life group. We have a Thursday night Bible study, and our single young adults, we have the same thing. So our life groups are our Sunday morning ministry. And then for our single young adults, we have our Thursday night, we call it SYA night. And so it really is a time for fellowship. We do food, we have worship and Bible study, and then afterward we just have games and things like that. And it's just a fun event every week, but also centered around God's Word and worship and things like that.
Now, prior to coming on staff here, you had never led singles before.
Correct. I was a youth pastor, and before that I worked for the government. So
Yes, he was a spy.
I was not a spy.
Okay. Sort of a spy? No. Well, what were you?
I had a clearance. I worked in communications, but the secrets I knew I barely understood, and I couldn't remember any of them. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so no interesting
Yeah.
spy stories.
So when you first got the job, I mean, obviously God called you to that, and we're very thankful on behalf of all singles of the world. We're so happy when a man, a pastor, and or a female are called to minister to singles. So we thank you. But when you got here, what were some of the things you had to learn that you, or maybe because you know you were single obviously at one time yourself.
I was, although I did not spend a whole lot of time as a single adult. I've been with my wife since we were in high school, and then we got married pretty early on, and so it really was something that when God calls you to something, He lays it on your heart, and then you just have to go into learning process. Because I was a youth pastor, I loved my students, and so honestly, that was a hard thing for me to give up. But I felt like God was calling me to do this, and so you're supposed to say yes to God, even if
Mm-hmm.
and so I did, and so just learning the differences of, especially with the single young adults, I think there's some real distinctions. So, for instance, when we started having our SYA night Bible study, it was at my house. Well, when I'm at my house, I go to bed at 10 o'clock or something around there. Well, if you have a bunch of college age and a little above at your house, doesn't matter if it's a weeknight, they're not ready to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And so there are definitely adjustments like that, and just learning the community side that people are really hungry for, and so which I think is an awesome thing. And so learning how to foster biblical community, I think, has been a really important thing for me to continue to learn and continue to remember.
And yeah, there's challenges of leading singles ministry in our country right now, where the numbers of singles keep going up, yet the ministry to them has continued to go down. More and more pastors are taking on second hats, third hats, four hats, and of course, the more a pastor takes on, the less singles get attention. And so, the more that our leaders have to be equipped to be able to handle and be the extension of the pastor. You guys know that I travel full time. Normally, COVID has slowed down things, but I'm on the tail end of a tour. Very thankful and to be here in Illinois, and I have been able to minister to some of the ministries around the country as I've traveled, and we're seeing some of the same types of things still. Our young singles are doing pretty good because a lot of times they're just called young adults, and there are times that churches will actually hire a young adult pastor. And then the older singles, which have aged up, and the ones that used to be really active in their 40s and 50s are now the 60s and the 70s, and they've aged up, but often they don't want to do as many things. They're not as active, or I'd say they like to sit and eat, because I'm getting in that direction. You just want to sit and eat, but I'm very active. But the whole mindset sometimes of an older single is very different, and then that in between is still our challenge, right, Obie?
Oh, definitely.
Finding that 30s to 40s. The 30s are too old to, they're not. They already maybe have bought a house. They might be a single parent, but they're not a 20-something living at home, trying to figure out the future, and they definitely don't want to come to a singles event and see their grandpa, and and they like to be married. Well, I find most singles want to be married, but definitely in the 30s and 40s, and so we find that as a challenge, I think, all over the country. And it's one that we definitely need to be praying for, and maybe we'll leave that to another topic of how do we reach that demographic, how do we build. But so I have some questions for Obie, because I want to find out what he's doing here, what is he doing in this church, and how are the lives of singles changing. So back in March, I interviewed you, did this like pastor's minute or pastor's corner. I did some little thing, and I interviewed Obie and asked him what is he doing as a result of COVID. So I wanted to kind of touch base with him again and say, okay, now you've had 8-9 months. We all thought it was going to be this short thing, and it would go away, and then it didn't, and then it didn't again,
And it still hasn't.
and it came back with another resurgence. So what did you do in March that you then slowly had to change and adjust for now?
Yeah, so especially with the young singles, so the single adults, our older group, was more ready to be quarantined and things like that. And so for them, I really wanted to just emphasize care for each other, connect with each other, things like that. But the young singles, they still wanted to meet and do things and get out. And so so first we started with what we called SYA Night Live, because our Thursday nights, SYA Night, what we did just a live Facebook and YouTube. And so it was a little more like a TV show, for lack of a better word, but we just talked about biblical things, and really we at first started continued the lesson we were already doing in Daniel, but then we switched to topics for single young adults. Well, then our state kind of opened back up, and so we went back to normal Thursday nights, SY night, but we realized that having the online presence was just going to be so important going forward. And so what we did is we started a podcast called Faith in Real Life, and so that's through our church. And then we also continued to live stream our Thursday nights for people who are quarantined or just are not ready to come back. And so we're realizing that it's going to have to be a hybrid approach, and the online presence is important. And just one quick testimony: had a guy who he was never super connected to our group, but then he also moved away, and he just randomly messaged me out of the blue and said, "Hey, just want you to know I've been looking at your online stuff, listening to the podcast, things like that, and just really feeling fed." And so, you know, that's a good thing to hear, but it also just kind of reminds us that there's kind of a new way of doing things, and it's not all bad, right? There's some advantage where you can reach people in a different way, and people that you may not have reached before.
Well, there were, you know, before we wouldn't have even thought about doing Zoom or any type of podcast beyond what some people are already doing podcasts. It's nothing new. But as a church, you're already busy ministering. You're not going to go, oh, let me add one more thing to the list to do. One more event now I have to set up, and I have to have special cameras. I have to someone to edit. I have someone that's going to video it. It's just, and you wouldn't have been thinking, oh, let me just add this to my plate already.
Right.
But now it kind of forced us. You know, what the enemy wanted to do with COVID, you know, God has been able to take in turn and say, we're going to find a way to use this to still reach even more people for the Lord. And so for a lot of us, you know, doing Zoom or doing a live broadcast of our events or our conferences or our Bible studies is going to be the way to do it new. And especially reaching people who maybe either don't live in the area that we want to reach, you know, if the kingdom is bigger than our church, right? Or it may be that someone is thinking about moving there or lives in your town, hasn't come to your singles event yet, or your young singles, because they don't really know who's there, and they get a chance to watch it first, and then they can make a decision, right?
Yeah.
Or if they've missed a week for whatever reason, they
can catch up. And what I've also felt like was just really cool is that I feel like God's Spirit's just really moving, and I think there is something powerful about pausing all the other activities in life that has been refreshing for some. Obviously, there's terrible things happening in the lives of some as well, but there's also a time for revival. And so I've just seen that. You know, we've still been baptizing people, leading people to Christ, and that's just an awesome thing to be part of. And so that's what I would encourage people, especially if they felt isolated, things like that, is look for new ways to connect to people, and don't just look to connect for you, but look to connect because you want to invest in people, and you want to check up on people and say, how are you doing, and let me learn about you and how you're handling it. I think those are healthy things for people to do.
We do get stuck, right? We get stuck in the way we do things because it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's easy, we know what to expect. COVID has created a change. We thought it was going to go away, so we stayed comfortable. We're like, well, this will be for a while, and then it'll go back to normal. But we don't really know what that is anymore. We don't know how long this will last. We don't know anything about the vaccine. So God is saying, I'm still in control. You know, God is still on the throne. God is still in charge of everything that's happening, still in charge of your life for those who call themselves followers of Jesus Christ. And so we then need to think outside the box.
Yep.
You know, we need to try some different things and maybe make phone calls with people that we wouldn't normally, or Facebook somebody, or be a part of a Zoom. We may need to physically drop off groceries at somebody's house, or some cookies right now at Christmas, which leads me to another question, which is, how do you know, I hear a lot of singles, and we titled this Surviving the Holidays. You know, how do you get through these holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, especially as a single who maybe doesn't have family that live here, or they can't go to the family due to COVID? What are some things you would suggest?
Yeah, so I think the enemy does a good job of making us feel like we're the only one going through whatever we're going through, and we just need to remember that we're not. And we also need to remember that God didn't put us here just to have our needs met. In fact, it's a better way to operate, to see yourself as someone who is here to meet the needs of others. And so if someone is feeling lonely, then instead of wishing people would come to them, go check on other people who are lonely.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's a better way to operate in life. And as you invest in people, sometimes it's not going to work out, but you'll find that other people reciprocate sometimes, and that's a good thing. But you're doing it because you know that if you're feeling a certain way, other people are too. And so just a quick principle. I
Yeah.
think that's just a simple thing to do. Is our phones still work. COVID has not broken those. We can call, and in fact, technology is so good that you can video call somebody, so you can see someone's face. And so I just encourage people to do that. Is think about people who are in your life, and maybe they're still kind of fringe. Just check up on them.
Check
See
it
how
out.
they're doing.
Yeah, so the George Jetson, the Jetsons, we never thought we'd have a day where you could actually talk to somebody on the phone, and
It's wild.
it's come to pass. And I love to videotape my mother. Whenever I do FaceTime with her, she always shows me from here up. I go, Mom, move the camera up. Move the camera up. And she's like, I don't like you to look at my face. I'm
You
like,
need a bloopers episode.
and well, then it'd be funny.
That would be.
I would love that. And that's one of the things that God has challenged me as a single adult is to go through my Facebook pages and check on people that I normally don't check on, just to say Merry Christmas. Something else that is a good idea that I saw happening at a really large ministry in Indianapolis is they had a Thanksgiving a Zoom where people they set up a Zoom on Thanksgiving Day at like 2 p.m, and anybody could come in on the Zoom call and just talk about what they were thankful for. And
that's cool.
and it was beyond just the normal. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for my job. I mean, people were like, I'm thankful that that God did this for me, or I'm thankful that I do have shoes, or I'm thankful that God healed my uncle, or it was beyond like the normal. Like they were really, really thinking about what they were happy about, what was God doing, where did God show up. So I want to do this on Christmas Day. I know a lot of single adults that their families aren't here, or they can't see them due to COVID. Some are in quarantine because they were exposed. Some, their kids are with their former spouse, and they're not going to have them for Christmas Day, and it's going to be the toughest day of their life. And so I want to have a day where you could come on a Zoom and just talk, and not so much about what presents you got, although we can talk about that too, or maybe crazy presents you got, but just simply to let you know, like you said, we're not alone, right? We're not alone. One of the things that I thought was really interesting that I heard you also did, Obie, was, and something that I challenge pastors all the time in doing, is I remind pastors that, although yes, it's your job and you're the pastor and you're there to lead these singles, one of the greatest ways of knowing that my pastor cares about me is to check on me, maybe have me over at his house for dinner at some point in time. I love to see wives involved, husbands involved. I love seeing children involved, because ministry doesn't just end at your door of your office when you leave. And so I was really encouraged to find out from your wife that you guys, with your older singles, which again, sometimes can be a challenge because of, life. You've got a lot more baggage, a lot more pain, a lot more stuff. That you guys kind of went to the next step and did something amazing recently. What did you do?
Well, so I won't take credit for it. I have an idea. My wife does a great job executing that vision. So we just wanted to give him a Christmas treat. And so I don't bake, right? I just don't. My wife, one time she was gone, my kids always remind me of this story, is that I tried to make pancakes one time for them, and I just always thought that all you have to do is turn it really hot because pancakes cook fast, right? So apparently that's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So I burned a pancake, and then I was using a rubber spatula, and it melted onto the pan, and like I ruined her pan and 6 pancakes and the spatula.
Yeah.
And so I don't bake. So I just said, hey, it'd be cool to go out and give them some Christmas treats and things like that. And so my wonderful wife did a lot of cooking, and then my kids were troopers. They were in the car. I think it was like a 4-hour route. And so it took a while. My 6-year-old fell asleep while we were on it, because there's only so many Christmas carols they can listen to in a van. And so, but anyway, it was cool, and got to see a lot of my class that I haven't gotten to see as much from a distance,
Yeah.
of course. We see them through our Sunday Zoom meetings and things,
Yeah.
but it's kind of cool to be at their house and
Yeah.
do that. And so that was fun.
Well, recently I spoke at a church a couple nights ago in Blue Springs, Missouri, outside of Kansas City. And that pastor came up with he did like a Thanksgiving event,
Friendsgiving.
Friendsgiving.
That's what we do.
And so he taught on how to survive the holidays, and he came up with a list of things. You know, everything from getting out of the box and doing something you don't normally do, thinking about somebody you don't normally think of, taking a meal over to someone. You know, basically stop thinking about yourself. You know, and understanding that it is tough, but the greatest way to forget about your problems is to help somebody with their problems. So he came up with a list of ideas, and so I took his list and I added some more of my ideas and some additional content, and I posted it on my website. That's thesinglesnetwork.org. And if you aren't, you know, it is a tough time for you right now, I would encourage you to go to my website and look at that article, get some ideas on maybe how you can help survive the holidays, as well as maybe even start something new and get out of that box and stop looking at what used to be and say, God, what can happen that could be new, that could change someone's life? Would you agree with that, Obie?
Sounds good.
Sounds
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Look to minister to other people. I think it's the best way to kind of, as you said, forget about our own problems for a bit, because other people have them too. And what if we could help each other?
Yes. And so one thing that I do every year, I've been doing this for 20 years, is my mother and I, we always sponsor a single parent at Christmas. Whether we buy their Christmas meal, or we buy a tree, or we buy presents for the kids. We've always done this every year because my mom was a single mom for a large percentage of our growing up, as well as now she's a widowed single mother of grown kids. And so this year I found a single dad that has many children, and I am honored that we're going to get to be able to help buy some of his groceries for Christmas meal. And so maybe you can think of the same way, you know, who in your life that really could use some help. Maybe you don't have any money, but you have time. Maybe you could write Christmas cards. What a concept. We don't even do that anymore. But I really challenge you to think outside the box. I want to close with some scripture that some of you might be familiar with, and that I really like, and this is in Acts. This is the scripture where it talks about everybody's there for Pentecost, and there's tons of people in the city, and they are really, like, you know, scrambling a little bit for resources, for food and things they might need, and they're all there together, and they realize that this person might have had 2 loaves of bread, and this person has an extra goat, and this person has an extra blanket, and they started sharing what they had with each other. I want to read the scripture, and I would love if maybe Obie has a thought in it that can kind of tie in today's live Facebook and message about how do we survive the holidays. So this is in Acts 2, starting with 42. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All, not some, all the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone who had need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Didn't forget about meeting together. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
Yeah, so that's a famous passage that all preachers have to really go through in seminary, because it really talks about the 5 functions of the church: fellowship, evangelism, edification, ministry, and worship, right? So all of those different ones, and then there's more in there as well. And so the picture I hear is that we need each other, right? And so not just for our mental health, our emotional health, all those things, but for spiritual health, right? We grow together. The body of Christ is called a body for a reason. And I think of Ephesians, where it talks about how we're knit together and formed together, is that we need each other. And some people think sometimes that they don't have anything to offer, right? I feel like people hear that, like, if I don't need to go to church or connect with anyone at church, they don't need me. And that's wrong. In fact, it's biblically inaccurate that you are at a place for a reason. I think one of the probably most under-heralded gifts in Scripture is Barnabas. He was an encourager. And people may say, well, you know, I'm not a preacher or teacher or something flashy, whatever, you know. An encourager if we don't think an encourager is important, have you ever been down? Right? I mean, what if that's the one thing you have to offer is you have a life experience or a
Yeah.
moment of free time
Yeah.
where you just provide a breath of fresh
Yeah.
air to another
Right.
human?
Yeah.
Man, that's powerful. And so that's what I would say is I hear in that passage is, there's all sorts of things that we as a body of believers do together. Go invest in other people.
Yeah.
That's what I hear in that
Yeah.
passage.
And I love it. So some people had extra things. I mean, you might have some extra stuff you can sell on Facebook. I bet you got stuff sitting around you haven't used, clothes you haven't used. Put it on Facebook, sell it, and take the money and bless somebody else. Give to somebody else. You don't have to be known. Just do it as a secret. You don't know until you actually, begin the process of doing something maybe that you wouldn't do. If you have time, call somebody, text somebody, send them a card. And if you can bake something. If you can help out at a local mission or a soup kitchen, offer yourself. But be like these new believers. As they started sharing and giving and caring, and they met together and they prayed together and they worshiped together and they read the word together, as they did that, God blessed them and added to their number more believers. Because one, people saw, like, I want to be a part of these group of people. They seem to love each other. They're not really fighting and fussing. I want to be a part of something that looks healthy. And that's the same thing with our singles ministries. We want our ministries, for those who have them, we want them to be healthy. And we want people to see, I want to be a part of that. Those singles love each other. They care about each other. Or that church cares about each other. Now, if you're watching this and you're like, I ain't got no singles ministry, Kris. Well, you know what? It starts with you and a cup of coffee with one other person. Don't worry about the numbers. Just start with one and say, God, who can I pour into? Who can I listen to? Who can I encourage? God will take care of all those needs. Don't worry about it. God, you be available for God, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And healthy things produce fruit. So when it says God adds to their number,
Yes.
that means people are getting saved.
Yes.
And that's why we're here.
Yes.
It's not just to not feel lonely,
Yes.
which we don't want to. I get that.
Yeah.
But we want people to be saved.
Yeah.
That's what the work's about.
Yeah. And and people are watching. They're watching how we handle things. They're watching how we handle COVID. Are we losing it and freaking out and getting scared and running around like a chicken with their head cut off? Or we're saying, you know what, God, I'm going to use this time to draw closer to you. Because the closer you are to God, the more you're going to hear him tell you which way to go and the peace that will come as a result of it. So even if things are, I don't get to go see my family and I don't get to eat those, Reese balls and those chocolate chip cookies I always liked. And, well, FaceTime or Zoom your family and don't bake them yourself, And but don't you let the enemy get you discouraged. Don't you let him keep you by yourself. Figure out a way to reach out. And you know what? You can email me. I'll FaceTime with you for Christmas if you want. Love to. And so we appreciate you. Again, this is Kris Swiatocho and
Obie, what's my last name?
Dalrymple.
Yeah. How about that?
And we are so glad. Merry Christmas, everyone. And hope, again, I'll see you next week. Bye.
See y'all. Thanks, Kris.